Hi, I'm Don Drake, and this is the Sketchy GM. Today we have another in my Lathe of Heaven series where I use my visual planning techniques on the large and slippery task of TTRPG campaign planning. Specifically, this is the third video of a series where I try to conceive of a campaign that is inspired by and partially overlaps with plot ideas from Becky Chambers' enjoyable novel, A Close and Common Orbit. Prior to the segment presented here, I looked over my previous notes and made some false starts for about 10 minutes. I decided to spare you the waffling. My goal was to clean up the rough story arc map that I'd made earlier. What I ended up with was a pretty tight storyboard for the entire campaign.
Past, plight, run, escape, and MacGuffin discovery. Okay, so we got tell, run, then tell, survival, prep for ultimate escape. Okay, then maybe run, ultimate escape. I'm not sure about that because I'm thinking about the book, and this is really where I was most strongly following what was going on in the book, and I'm thinking about some of the stuff, and I don't actually know how to create a parallel to the events of the book. Not sure how that would work, but tell, spiritual, fall, run, meeting. Okay, do I want to run the ultimate escape? So this is okay. This is tell, good, life. I'm more following this now. Run, a fight. Character loses. Care fails. Okay. Then tell, discovery of alternatives for the player and the MacGuffin. Okay. Is there something I can run here? Run, oath, and daring escape. Because they got to get out of this valley, which is now overrun with combatants. Tell, doubts, and travel. Okay, so a little bit, and then we'll drop this into the meeting. Okay, so this thing's starting to take shape in terms of what I actually need to do to run it. This is my one place I feel really pretty uncertain. I have to think about that. Now, run, we'll just call it Assassination Series, even though not all of it is. And then we'll run the vote, I think, or we might, what we can do is roll and tell about the vote outcome. That's the end of the thing. So the players will do as much as they think they need to sway the vote, and then we'll see how it ends up. That could be a real challenge to make dramatic, but it's not unusual for me to be faced with a part of the game that I just don't feel equal to the task of delivering my vision. And I don't understand because my plans are always so simple. The good news is the players seem to consistently enjoy what they're playing. I'm doing a lot of things to satisfy myself. And when they fail, I see them as, just falling short of my own personal benchmarks. I do believe that generally the players get a decent game. So what is in here? This is the tell the travel. Tell travel. A little unclear how this works. Let's say run, theft, reclamation. Okay. Really what I could do here, just continue with this pattern and tell skill evolution, and then run the assassinations. Okay. A common cause scenes. Okay, and I think to do this, include players in tell story creation. Does that make sense? So we ask the player, about certain aspects, and we share the responsibility of telling the story of what happened in these gap periods. That's a challenge for the player, and if I make the request specific enough for the part of the story I want them to provide, so that then I can talk through the required components that drive the story forward and leave them filling in color gaps so that the tone of their character's existence within the story is more in their control.
Well, that brings me to a turning point in the project. I have enough now that I could actually design the game. Primarily, I have a strategy for doing such a tightly scripted game. This plan actually is probably more appropriate to plotting out a novel than to designing a TTRPG campaign. But to have an alternating pattern of actual play and kind of cutscenes for the whole thing, which is a way to organize this. I can't say I've ever played a game like this. I've seen games, actual play games that did these little cutscene kind of development for characters at the beginning of the story to introduce character. But I've never seen a campaign that was designed like this. Could work. And it would give me an opportunity to hang on to the reins as I worked with the player to tell these segments and get their input on their character. And then we'd go into a designed encounter and see how that worked out and continue with telling the next part of the story. It could be interesting. I'm not sure I actually want to do this. I'm not sure my players would actually want to do this, but it is viable. It feels viable overall in this project, which I feel is coming to an end. I probably am not going to play this, or at least not right now, but I have this recorded. I can save this. I can look at these ideas later. But all in all, I'd say I stayed too attached to specific ideas in the planning, whether they were something that came from the novel or ideas that occurred to me that I kind of wanted to see in the storyline. I really got attached to those things, and I wasn't willing to let them go. And I hammered this thing pretty hard to include them. That's, I would say, in general, that's a failing. However, that set up a conflict with the way games typically run for D&D or any TTRPG. And it forced me to evolve this new pattern of a game that would let me hit the marks of the plot beats of my story much more closely, and give me a little more certainty that we weren't going to destroy the entire structure, the story structure, with really random choices or events. So, and I gotta say, planning this way with these diagrams, I'm not sure what this ended up being. I probably spent an hour and a half at the most overall on this project. And that's not bad. That's one of the things I like about these visual strategies for planning, is they're relatively quick. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, and we'll see what I do next.